how to record a radio commercial. Well, if you've got the right equipment, I'm going to step you through it one point at a time from beginning to end. And hopefully, I don't know, is this something you think you might want to try in the future? Well, let's get started. Let's find out. By the end of this video, I'm going to step you through the entire process from beginning to end. This is just what I do. There are a couple options and variables that you might want to change up or delete, or maybe even introduce some things of your own. And then at the very end, a couple little considerations that not too many people talk about. They can become important, so I don't want to leave them unsaid. So let's get started. So the first thing you're going to do is record the voiceover. First of all, that is going to be the basis of the entire thing, is what is the voiceover going to be? Whether it's a straight narration, or maybe it's a dialogue, or maybe it's just some kind of a narration over a sound effect scene or something like that. No matter what it is, always start with your voiceover. Step 2 is going to be to edit out the flubs. There are a bunch of stuff that you probably didn't mean to say in a certain way, or maybe you tripped over some sentence or something like that. Whatever it is, you're going to want to take out the flubs and get rid of them, and they're just not going to make it to the final cut. That's fine. Thank God for editing. Ain't that the truth? Right, guys? I got my filming crew here, and they're like, oh yeah, thank God for editing for you. So editing is very important. Now you get to the step of the big debate. Do you do EQ first and then compression, or do you do compression and then you EQ your voiceover? That's a debate that I'm not willing to have right here. I tell you, 9 times out of 10, I do EQ before compression. And then every once in a while, I'm like, man, that just doesn't sound right. And I start messing around with it and go backwards and flip it around and go upside down and stuff like that. And oh my gosh, this one sounds better. Compression first and then EQ. So however way you want to do it, there are pros and cons to both. Whatever works out best for you, however you work best, that's the way to do it. I know some people are going to debate me, some people are going to cast rocks and stones at me, but that's just how I do it. I personally do EQ and then compression. Now, if there are multiple channels for the voiceover, you're going to want to do that for all of them, whether it's recording, editing, EQ compression, compression EQ, and making sure that everything is done to all the voiceover channels that you need to do. So you're about halfway through. How you feel? You cutting your first commercial? You gonna step in the booth? You gonna handle this? You gonna tackle it next time? I don't see why not. Give it a shot. Well, there's actually more to it than that. There's gonna be a lot when it comes to your delivery and your speaking voice and stuff like that. So let's just keep going with the editing side. And there are a few more things that you're gonna have to take care of before we get going. Now, in the meantime, we cover all kinds of stuff here, whether it's blogging or a YouTube channel, podcasting even, and especially radio commercials and audio advertising. If any of that appeals to you, if you're trying to get that up and running for your business, be sure to subscribe to the channel. You're going to find something that you're going to be able to use immediately and hopefully benefit your business. Now, you've got the voiceovers all squared away. That's all done. I personally go for the sound effects at this point. I add my sound effects in if I need them. There are times when there are a couple different ways to use sound effects, either in the background and it's just kind of going to reinforce what is being talked about, or you can actually do it, say, in between lines and have it steal the focus for a split second. For example, just the other day, a friend of mine edited a commercial. The people who were attending the event were thanking the sponsors of the event and said, so now these are the people we need to say thank you to. And then he had a little sound effect of some little tiny voices going, thank you. That was one where the thank you, the second thank you, kind of emphasized what was just being spoken, but it stole the spotlight for a split second. Now, there are other times when you can talk about a cold, windy night and you hear the in the background. That can run underneath the description and the dialogue and the voiceover and enhance the scene as to what's going on. So sometimes it steals focus, sometimes it reinforces what's already going on. That is going to be your call, and you should be able to figure that out depending on what's going on in the scene at the time. This is where you start to add your music. Once you've got all the sound effects set, bring in the music. Now, for just rough editing, for just Throwing stuff on the channel, you can probably get your voiceover around -10, -5 dB. Your music and sound effects, just go ahead and set it to -15 dB and just make sure that nothing's really competing or fighting with each other. You're going to make final adjustments. Trust me, everything's going to be taken care of in the final mix, but just to give yourself some separation so your music and your sound effects aren't blowing the doors off the voiceovers, just go ahead and set your rough levels at that. Voiceover anywhere between -10 and -5, and then your music and sound effects anywhere between -15 and -20, depending on how strong the recordings are. Now, there's another little technique called ducking. And ducking is when you set up things, and it's kind of a technical thing, but you use an expander and stuff like that. But what happens is, if you're just doing a straight voiceover with a little bit of music in the background, every time you speak, let's say you've got the music running in the background, whenever you speak, the music drops down. And then whenever you pause, the music comes back up. So you have this up-down effect with the music. Now, if done correctly and properly, you're not going to know the music, you know, stuff, it's not going to jump that much. But what it will do is whenever the vocals start, it will duck under them in order to give them a little bit more presence and focus. Plus, people are all of a sudden, their ear is going to tune in to the dialogue, to the vocals, and kind of get away from the song, the music or the sound effects. So ducking, if that's something you want to get into, that technique you can use to your advantage, or you can simply do it manually, one or the other. Take your pick. Now, once you do have your levels all set, your vocal levels are right where you want them, the sound effects and the music, all of that stuff is where you want them, and you've got everything set the way you want it, there is one more step that some people use and some people don't. It's called mastering. Mastering gives it that final polish. And what you're doing in its most technical sense, you're kind of giving it a little clarity, maybe one more EQ, another compression, and it just kind of brings a whole richness and roundness to everything. It blends it all together a lot better. You can throw everything together in the cake pan. You know, you can add the cake mix and the oil and the egg, but that doesn't make it a cake. You got to bake it first, right? Mastering is kind of the baking, all right? Now, don't get me wrong. You know, it tastes good to lick the batter, all right? But it's not a cake. This is the same way. Mastering, you've got yourself a commercial. It's just not the best it could be. I use a little mastering plugin, maybe make some few little adjustments, and then it just makes the vocals and the sound effects and the music all not only blend together, but also stand out from each other when they should, et cetera, et cetera. It's one last little touch to really make things pop for your commercial. And then once you finally got everything done the way you want it, it's time to mix it down. Go ahead and give yourself a 30 or 60-second commercial. Mixing it down means you're going to take all those separate tracks and you're going to blend them all together into either a mono track or stereo mix. So you'll have two tracks, a left and a right, or you can do a mono track and everything is now blended together or mixed together. The final step is whatever you're looking at, whether it be a 30-second or a 60-second commercial, I give it one more touch. And that is, if it's a 30, I take the actual commercial itself. You can either chop off the dead space before it and chop off the dead space after it, or you just simply select the commercial itself, and there's probably a shrink or stretch command in the program you're using. You're going to want to shrink it or stretch it to either 29.999 seconds or 59.999 seconds. Whatever it is, whether it's a 15, you want to go 14.999. If it's a 10, go 9.999. 30, 29.999, 60, 29, 59.99. You want to be just a hair under, just to be on the safe side. Especially when it comes to a satellite-driven format and you have like 5 commercial breaks, you're only 5/10,000ths of a second. That's well within tolerances, okay? You're doing good. That's just fine. But you're under the amount of time allocated, a 30 or a 60 or whatever the case may be. You're just that little fraction under and you know it's fitting. Now, when it comes to shrinking or stretching, you don't want to go any more than 2.5%. Many people will look at that and go, for example, I get requests all the time, a 15-second commercial, but they send me 17 seconds worth of copy versus a 30-second commercial and they send me 32 seconds worth of copy. Would you believe the 32-second ad is going to sound better than the 15-second ad? Because 2 seconds for a 15 is a heck of a lot more percentage-wise than 2 seconds for a 30. So you really want to go, you don't want to make that adjustment, either lengthen it or shorten it more than 2.5%. For example, in a 30-second commercial, 10% is what? 3 seconds. 5% is 1.5 seconds, right? You with me? So what's half of that? That would be 2.1%, so that would be 3/4 of a second. You don't want to go any more than that for any type of an adjustment in a 30. And then take those exact same percentages, not times, percentages, and apply them to all the others. You want to keep that adjustment to a minimum. There are some people who say, no, you can't even do that. Believe me, I feel their pain. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes, I would much prefer to just nail it than to have to make an adjustment. I really would. But if you're going to make that adjustment, keep it to an absolute minimum. And there's so many like salespeople and other administrators who have other jobs at the radio station that just want you to fudge it no matter what. It can get ugly. You ever heard of the chipmunk effect? Yeah, that's what it ends up doing. But the smaller you can adjust, the better off you'll be. Keep it under 2.5%, and you really won't notice it. You really won't notice it at all. And then, depending on where you're sending this commercial, is it going to the local radio station? Is it going to Spotify? Is it going to Pandora? Whatever. There are some other requirements that those other formats may have that you need to adhere to. And some of it can get really, really technical. Let's just say it can get really deep in the electronics. Fortunately, there's probably your software is going to handle 99% of it. You just need to know how to set it, but at least wherever it's going, check with them and find out what specs they need it delivered. Do they need WAV or MP3? What's the bit rate? What's the sample rate? What's the RMS? Do they go by RMS or do they go by LUFS? Whatever it is that they end up using, please check with them and make your audio adhere to whatever they're requiring. It's pretty simple, really. But there's a lot of room for interpretation. There's a lot of room for artistic expression. There's a lot of room to put your thumbprint on commercials that you've produced. It's pretty cool. When you get the hang of it and you can learn how to have fun with it, trust me, it is a lot of fun. Well, I've got something that you might want to get a copy of. Down below in the description is a link for the radio advertising checklist. Get yourself a copy of that. It walks you through the entire copy and writing process of writing a radio commercial. There's a lot more to it than you think, and you end up with a really good results. So get yourself a copy right now by clicking the link down below. I'm Nick Natarella with AdWise Creative. Thank you for watching.